Streaming has become a digital landfill, burying genuine art under mountains of bargain bin filler. You can spend 40 minutes scrolling through the free section and find nothing but movies that look like they were shot on a flip phone. It's a drain on the soul. I've spent the last week digging through the archives to find 9 titles that actually justify their runtime. These aren't just background noise. They're the kind of stories that stick to your ribs. They're free right now, but licenses move fast, so catch them while you can. Number 1. The Big Combo, 1955. When we talk about film noir, most people think of the big studio hits, but this is where the genre gets its teeth. This movie feels like it was filmed in a damp alleyway at 3 in the morning after the streetlights went out. The visual DNA here is the work of John Alton, a man who didn't just photograph scenes, he sculpted them out of pure darkness. Alton was a renegade who famously wrote about painting with light, and in this film, he proves it. He used a single light source for many of the setups, creating these deep ink-black voids where the characters seem to be swallowed by their own sins. It's a high-contrast nightmare that makes modern dark cinematography look flat and amateurish. The real friction behind the scenes was the battle with the censors. In the mid-50s, the Hays Code was an iron fist, but director Joseph H. Lewis and Alton found ways to shoot around the rules that made the final product feel even more perverse than if they had just shown everything. There's a scene involving the lead gangster, Mr. Brown, and his girlfriend that is famously suggestive without showing a single inch of skin. It's all in the shadows and the sound design. The studio was terrified of it, thinking it represented a kind of moral rot, but that's exactly why it remains a masterpiece. It captures a sense of clinical cruelty that was decades ahead of its time. If you're used to the clean, heroic lines of classic cinema, this is a shock to the system. It's slow, deliberate, and creates a mounting sense of dread that is arguably the most effective in the history of crime films. Now, if that shadow-drenched city feels a bit too contained, and you want to see what happens when that same psychological tension is dragged out into a sun-bleached desert where there's nowhere to hide, you have to look at this next one. Number 2. The Shooting, 1966. This is a fever dream on horseback. It stars a young, hungry Jack Nicholson and the legendary Warren Oates. But don't expect a standard shootout. This is a stripped-back, existential hunt across a landscape that looks like the surface of the moon. The reality of this production is what makes it so tactile. Director Monty Hellman took a tiny crew into the Utah desert on a shoestring budget of about $75,000. There were no trailers, no cold water, and no safety net. When you see Warren Oates staring into the sun with eyes that look like they've been rubbed with sandpaper, that isn't a choice he made in a comfortable studio. That is the look of a man who is actually suffering for the frame in 110-degree heat. The friction on this set was intense because the script was so abstract that the actors often didn't even know what their motivations were from scene to scene. Nicholson, who also produced, was essentially keeping the wheels from falling off, while Hellman focused on the visual tone. It results in a movie that feels unmoored from reality. It's about a bounty hunter and a mysterious woman chasing a target through the wasteland, and the tension builds into a surreal, brain-breaking mystery. I'll be honest, if you need a clear-cut narrative with a traditional resolution, this movie is going to irritate you. It refuses to hold your hand. But if you appreciate the raw grit of a low-budget production that managed to capture the feeling of a heat-induced hallucination, this is essential. Speaking of Nicholson and movies that treat the protagonist like a man hanging by a thread, this next pick takes that same paranoid energy and moves it into the grimy streets of an Atlantic city that was already rotting away. Number 3. The King of Marvin Gardens, 1972. I've been itching to talk about this one because it's so often overshadowed by Nicholson's bigger hits. Don't let the title fool you. There's nothing regal about this. It's a bleak, winter-set look at the death of the American dream. Nicholson plays David Stabler, a radio storyteller who lives a quiet, internal life until his brother, Jason, played by a manic Bruce Dern, calls him down to Atlantic City to help pull off a delusional real estate grift. They shot this on location during the freezing off-season, and the atmosphere is everything. You can practically feel the damp salt air and the smell of wet plywood coming off the boardwalk. It's a city of ghosts, and the film captures that perfectly through its handheld, unpolished camera work. The history of this film is fascinating, because it was part of the BBS Productions wave, the same people who gave us Easy Rider. They were given total creative freedom by the studios. And you can tell, this isn't a movie made to please a test audience or sell popcorn. It's a character study that focuses on the friction between two brothers who love each other but are fundamentally incompatible. Dern is a guy who thinks he's one deal away from being a king, while Nicholson is the guy who knows the deck is stacked. The acting here is like a raw nerve, especially in the scenes filmed inside the old Marlborough Blenheim Hotel before it was demolished. I'll warn you, the pacing is very 70s. It takes its time, and it's deeply melancholic. It's a haunting portrait of how we use our dreams to lie to ourselves. It's a movie that lets you feel the tragedy of the situation without over-explaining the stakes. Now, if that internal drama is a bit too quiet and you want something with a much higher body count and a lot more physical grit, we've got to talk about a crime thriller that doesn't pull a single punch. Number 4. Prime Cut, 1972. This is a visceral, unapologetic collision between a Chicago mob enforcer and a Kansas City meat magnate. It stars Lee Marvin and Gene Hackman, and it is a masterpiece of 70s filmmaking. But I have to give you a warning. The opening 5 minutes are not for the faint of heart. It shows the actual, industrial process of a slaughterhouse. And director Michael Ritchie uses that to set the tone for how humans are treated in this world. There was zero computer-generated imagery here. The entire setting of the Kansas flatlands is used to create a sense of lawless isolation. It feels like a world where the laws of the city don't apply, and the crew actually filmed in real livestock pens to get that authentic, unwashed texture. The standout detail here is the practical danger of the production. There's a chase scene in a wheat field involving a massive combine harvester. This isn't a green screen stunt. That is Lee Marvin and Sissy Spacek actually running in front of a multi-ton piece of heavy machinery that could have turned them into mincemeat if anyone had tripped. It gives the action a tactile, stomach-turning reality that you just don't get with modern digital effects. The film explores the rot of the heartland, depicting Hackman's character as a man who views everything, cattle, women, and enemies, as nothing more than product to be processed. It's coarse and incredibly cynical. But if you want to see two titans like Marvin and Hackman go head-to-head in a movie that feels like it was forged in a furnace, this is the one. But if that American heartland violence is a little too heavy for your night, and you want to see how the British were handling a mission movie during the same era, look at this forgotten gem. Number 5. The Seawolves, 1980. This is a classic adventure that brings together Gregory Peck, Roger Moore, and David Niven. It features a group of retired British veterans who come out of mothballs during World War II to sink a Nazi radio ship in a neutral port. It's based on a true story, the secret mission of the Calcutta Light Horse. What makes this a cult classic is how it depicts aging and competence. These aren't young super soldiers. They're men who have to figure out how to be dangerous again. It has a professional feel where the planning and the logistics are just as interesting as the actual raid, which was a hallmark of the director, Andrew V. McLaglen. The production is interesting because it's one of the last great mid-budget adventures before everything turned into a blockbuster spectacle. They shot a lot of it in Goa, India, and the humidity and heat of the location add a lush, heavy atmosphere that contrasts with the stiff upper lip grit of the characters. I'll admit, the pacing is a bit of a slow burn in the second act, and Roger Moore is essentially playing a version of his Bond persona. But the final sequence where they actually carry out the raid is a masterclass in how to build suspense through geography and timing rather than rapid-fire editing. It's a movie for people who like to see professionals do a job. It's been tucked away on YouTube for a while, and it's a perfect watch if you want something that feels sturdy and well-crafted. Along those same lines of men doing a job, but moving away from the military and into the realm of absolute psychological warfare, we have a movie that features one of the best actors of all time in a dual role. Number 6. The Man Who Haunted Himself, 1970. This was Roger Moore's personal favorite role, and it couldn't be further from Bond. He plays Harold Pelham, a conservative, buttoned-up businessman who survives a car crash and starts to suspect that a duplicate of himself is taking over his life. This is a psychological thriller that uses the gray, sterile offices and rainy streets of London to create a sense of claustrophobia. The friction here is entirely internal. It's a man at war with his own identity. The director, Basil Dearden, was a veteran of British cinema who knew exactly how to make an everyday setting feel like a trap. The detail that makes this work is the restraint of the production. Dearden doesn't use cheap tricks or heavy-handed effects to show the double. He uses mirrors, camera angles, and Moore's nuanced acting to suggest the presence of the other. I'll warn you, it's very British and dialogue-heavy. If you need a car chase every 5 minutes, you'll be bored. But for those who appreciate a sense of growing dread and a performance that doesn't hold anything back, this is a tight 90-minute trip. It's a fascinating, underrated gem that explores that classic question of whether we are who we think we are, or if there's a darker version of us just waiting for a chance to take the wheel. It's a quiet masterpiece of the identity horror subgenre. Now, if you want to keep that paranoid energy but you're tired of the London suburbs and want to see what happens when the military gets involved in a biological nightmare, look at this. Number 7. The Crazies, 1973. Before the world knew George Romero as the guy who invented the modern zombie, He made this absolute nightmare about a biological weapon that accidentally infects the water supply of a small town. It isn't a monster movie, it's a system failure movie. It shows the military incompetence and the breakdown of order in a way that feels terrifyingly plausible. The grit comes from the handheld camera work and the fact that Romero used real townspeople as extras. It gives the film an authenticity that makes it feel like a news report from the end of the world. The military is depicted not as a heroic rescue force, but as a confused, bureaucratic machine that is just as dangerous as the virus itself. The white hazmat suits and the gas masks become a visual shorthand for an oppressive system that doesn't care about the people it's supposed to protect. I'll be honest, the budget limitations are visible. This was a guerrilla production filmed in Evans City, Pennsylvania, but the sense of panic and the us versus them mentality is gnarly. It's a street-level look at a global disaster, and it proves that you don't need $100 million to create a sense of total atmospheric collapse. It's a raw, angry film that reflects the cynicism of the era perfectly. If that small-town chaos is a bit too loud for you, and you want a much more clinical, high-stakes look at a man trying to survive a legal trap, this next pick is a masterpiece. Number 8. Seconds, 1966. This is the final film in John Frankenheimer's Paranoia trilogy, and it is an absolute gut punch. A bored, middle-aged businessman is approached by a secret organization that offers to fake his death and give him a new face and a new life. He's transformed into a handsome painter, played by Rock Hudson, and sent to a colony in California. Hudson's performance is easily the most internal and haunting of his life. He was a guy who lived a double life in reality, and you can feel that social truth bleeding into the role. The technical aspect of Seconds is what made it a cult legend. Cinematographer James Wong Howe used distorted wide-angle lenses and camera rigs attached to the actor to make the viewer feel as disoriented and panicked as Hudson's character. It was decades ahead of its time. The transition from the gray, cramped streets of New York to the bright, hollow parties of Malibu is used to show that you can change your face, but you can't escape yourself. I'll tell you right now, this movie is a total downer. It is a brutal look at the emptiness of the American dream and the ultimate cost of trying to buy a second chance. If you're looking for a light Friday night flick, skip this. But if you want a movie that sticks under your skin for a week, this is it. It's one of the most daring films ever released by a major studio. Finally, my top pick on this list, a movie that takes that tough guy DNA and mixes it with a nihilistic 70s crime vibe that is just pure, unadulterated cinema. Number 9. The Friends of Eddie Coyle, 1973. If you haven't seen this yet, I don't know what you're doing. Robert Mitchum gives a career-best performance as Eddie Fingers Coyle, a low-level hood in Boston who is facing a prison sentence and starts cooperating with the law to save himself. This is the ultimate no-nonsense crime movie. There are no flashy shootouts, no heroic speeches, and no cool gangsters, just tired men in ugly coats making bad deals in cold parking lots. The reality of the Boston underworld is captured so perfectly it feels like a documentary. They shot this on location in Boston and Quincy during the dead of winter. The sky is always gray, the snow is always dirty, and the atmosphere is thick with a sense of inevitable failure. The relationship between Eddie and the federal agents is entirely transactional. Nobody is a hero here, everyone is just trying to survive the week. It's a movie about the cost of loyalty and how easily the system can grind a man into nothing. It's currently free on YouTube, and I'm telling you, make it the first thing you watch tonight. It's a rock-solid example of why the 70s were the peak of American filmmaking. It doesn't round off the edges, and it doesn't offer any easy outs. It's the kind of movie that makes everything else look like a cartoon. Alright, that's the list. 9 films that managed to escape the landfill of modern streaming. They're available for free right now, but these licenses move fast, so catch them while you can. I'll keep hunting these down as long as y'all keep watching. Make the Friends of Eddie Coyle your priority. I'll see you on the next one.